Pensacola, Florida in 1979 was a city of movement. Military families moved in and out. Tourists passed through. Working-class families built their lives along the Gulf and went about their daily routines. And somewhere inside that ordinary rhythm, a young woman disappeared. People noticed. Questions were asked. Leads were followed. And yet, somehow, the trail still went cold. A 20-year-old woman vanished and left behind a case that has never fully let go of the people who remember it. 47 years later, her case remains unsolved, her last known movements blurred by time, and the truth just out of reach. This is the story of Barbara Bockwith. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders, where we explore the cases that still haunt America. Pensacola in the late 1970s was a city where transient movement was normal. Naval Air Station Pensacola brought a steady flow of military families, temporary personnel, and new faces passing through town. It shaped the town in obvious ways, but in a place where people regularly came and went, a stranger didn't always stand out. Barbara Bockwith was not someone drifting through life without direction. She was only 20 years old, but she was already building something for herself. She was taking college classes, studying accounting at the University of West Florida, and living at home with her parents, John and Neva Bockwith, at 220 Grieve Road in Navy Point. She was petite, just 5'3" and about 110 pounds, with blue eyes and long brown hair, and she had already done something pretty remarkable. At just 18, she became the youngest real estate agent in Florida, working alongside her family in the family's successful real estate business. She was young, but not directionless. She was close to home, close to family, and by all appearances, moving forward with her life. Wednesday, December 5th, 1979, started like any other day. Barbara had been up early that morning studying. Her father woke briefly at 4 a.m., speaking to Barbara before returning to bed. A couple hours later, when her parents got up for the day, they found a note from Barbara saying she had gone to a friend's house to continue studying. Later, at 7:20 that morning, Barbara had breakfast at McDonald's with her friend Betty Medley before heading back home to get some rest. It was an ordinary morning, the kind that doesn't stand out at the time because there's no reason to think it ever will. And that's always one of the hardest things in a case like this. The last memories are so normal. A quick conversation before dawn, a note left behind, breakfast with a friend, and then the day just moves on. Until it doesn't. Barbara was later seen by two friends in Building 58 on UWF's campus at 11:10. She stopped briefly to speak with them, then continued on, telling them that she was headed to her 11:20 class. But Barbara never made it to class. Instead, just 40 minutes later, at about 12:05, she was seen by another friend driving through the intersection of Crichton Road and 9th Avenue in a red Toyota headed south. It would be the last confirmed sighting of her. Her parents were not overly concerned when she didn't return home that night. They assumed she was staying with a friend and there was no immediate reason to think anything was wrong. But by 1 o'clock the following afternoon, when they still had not heard from her, they reported her missing. Looking back now, this case falls into one of the most frustrating time periods for a disappearance. There were no cell phones, no digital records, very little surveillance, and far fewer ways to retrace someone's final movements. Most of the time it came down to witnesses, timing, and on whether police recognized early enough that something was actually wrong. And too often they didn't. That appears to be what happened here. As the days passed with no sign of Barbara, her family could feel the urgency building. But for several days the report wasn't even distributed to other agencies because authorities believed Barbara may have left voluntarily. Her parents didn't believe that. They knew their daughter, and they did not believe she had simply walked away from her life without a word. By Sunday, 4 days after Barbara was last seen, the family had reached a breaking point. At their wits' end, they contacted Robert Waldrop, an area manager for the Wackenhut Corporation, a private detective and security company. They simply weren't willing to let this fade into the background. They gathered about 15 friends and relatives together in a room with a private investigator, and they started trying to build momentum themselves. Sometime during that meeting, information came up that led Waldrop to call city police at 9 a.m. the next morning, Monday, December 10th, asking them to check the parking lot at the municipal airport. It was never made public what information he received that led him to make that request. But whatever it was, it mattered. because it led to one of the most important discoveries in the case. Investigators found Barbara's red 1977 Toyota hatchback in the long-term parking area of what was then Pensacola Municipal Airport. The car was empty. Inside the car, investigators found a detail that immediately stood out. Barbara was only 5'3", but the driver's seat had been pushed back, suggesting that the person who parked the car may have been much taller than she was. That detail did not prove who had been inside the car, but it does change how you look at it. During interviews with Barbara's friends, several reported that Barbara had been having trouble with her ex-boyfriend, 25-year-old Robert Deaver, a husky 6'6" oil rig worker who lived 2 blocks away. And this was not just vague relationship drama. There was a documented history here. In April 1978, according to court records, Deaver broke into a home on Pensacola Beach and beat one of Barbara's new boyfriends. For that, he received 1 year probation. Then in early July of 1978, Barbara swore out another arrest warrant for him after he allegedly kicked her car, causing damage. When she confronted him, he allegedly became violent, rammed his car into hers, grabbed her, hit her, and tore off her necklace. Looking at that history now, this doesn't appear to just be a case of a bad breakup. It looks like a clear pattern of escalation. Waldorf met with Deaver, who agreed to take a lie detector test, and one was scheduled for the following day, Tuesday, December 11th, but he never showed. Waldorf asked Barbara's brother Charles to contact Deaver and remind him of the appointment. Charles went to Deaver's house at about 11 a.m., saw his car parked in the garage but didn't see him. At the request of Waldorf, he returned to Deaver's house with 3 friends at about 8 p.m. to check again. This time they found Deaver on a couch in the garage. He had suffered a self-inflicted gunshot wound. While Deaver was suspected by many as having some involvement in Barbara's case, there was never enough evidence to charge him with anything related to her case. And officially, there is no indication that his death was ever proven to be connected to Barbara's disappearance. No additional suspects have ever been publicly named. 5 years later, on December 5, 1984, Barbara was legally declared dead. There was no evidence proving whether she was alive or dead at that point, but her family believed she had been killed and buried somewhere in the county. Her bank account had never been touched. Her credit cards had never been used. Her case remains open, but inactive. And like so many families in cases like this, the Bockwiths were left to live with silence. Barbara's parents both died without ever learning what happened to their daughter. Her brother Charles has continued pushing for answers long after the headlines have faded. And that, to me, is part of what makes disappearances like this so difficult. In a murder case, terrible as it is, there's at least the possibility of a known ending. A body is found, a scene is processed. There's something concrete, however painful, to face. But a disappearance leaves people suspended. There is no final moment to hold on to, just a last sighting, a few scattered facts, and then years of waiting for one missing piece that never seems to come. For Barbara's family, that silence stretched far beyond 1979, beyond the first searches, beyond the first interviews, beyond those early days when they may still have believed she could somehow come home. What remains now is not just mystery, it's absence. A place at the table that stayed empty. A young woman frozen in old photographs while everyone who loved her was forced to keep growing old without her. Barbara should have had that chance too. That's one of the reasons older cold cases still matter. Not because every case will be solved and not because every lost answer can be recovered. They matter because the people at the center of them mattered. Barbara Bockwith was not just a file or a date on a headline. She was a daughter, a student, a young woman with plans, routines, and people who loved her. She lived in a real place among real people, and then one day she was simply gone. And if someone still knows what happened to her, even now, that truth still matters. Because time can wear down memories, it can erode evidence, but it does not erase responsibility. And it should never erase the person at the center of the story. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.